Hello, and welcome to our interview series with the people who teach art and design at the Community College of Baltimore County. This series is in conjunction with the art exhibition that features the artwork of people who teach here. And we're sitting down today with the lovely Sarada Conaway. And we're going to pick her brain a little bit about how she, got into artwork and all that sort of thing. So to begin with, what led you to wanting to do art as sort of your career, your life passion?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I ever had a particular moment where I thought where I made that decision. When I was a young woman, I worked as a designer, and I mean a very, very young woman when I was in elementary, middle, high school, because just through family connections, ended up working as but this is not high-end design, I should preface that. So I always sort of thought that I would do something like art or design related, but I think I got into fine art and really like art that I wasn't really aware of when I was younger as a result of starting college. I got into school and really just all of a sudden became aware of a world of art processes and disciplines that I didn't have any sort of awareness of whatsoever. Didn't know that they existed at all. So I think really just starting school probably would have been about the time that I got into more like fine art, interesting processes, new processes.
That's cool. Well, that is what a cool experience to have at such a young age to be like doing design stuff. That's so cool.
Design little things. It was just, not high-end design. I can't state that. Cannot state that in a dramatic enough way. We're not talking about like high-end design world, just, little crafty things, lots of, but it was really, very enjoyable.
So sorry for the dog interruption. I think she'll just do you have any of like the pieces that you used to?
I don't think so. Probably not. Yeah. A lot of it was just little necklaces, earrings, things like that.
Yeah. What led you to decide that you wanted to teach?
I started teaching when I was in my early 20s. A friend of mine happened to be working at this kids art camp that ran in the summertime, and they were looking for counselors and all sorts of adults to come in and work with the children, and I just immediately loved it. I fell in love with the whole process, the environment. This was a really fun place to work. Lots of little children, and they all had selected to go to arts camp for the summer, so it was a good time. But I eventually, many years later, after teaching in several environments, one was more middle school, one was more elementary, I came to this conclusion, made the decision that it was probably not a good idea to stay with a younger audience for good, because the stamina that's required. It's a very different world, and in a college, you're able to take a little break if you need to. It is, and also your days are are structured in a much different way. So after having many 8-hour days where I had back-to-back classes, I realized, okay, I don't know if I could pull this off all the way until retirement. This is, but college level teaching, when I found that, I thought, yes, this is something I can stick with until I'm, a much leader person. I used to always joke that, when you teach college, if you need to leave the room to use the bathroom, that's allowed. And I remember thinking about how, like, when the people who work with kids, they're amazing. The stamina that they have to have, and they, like, you literally, you're on, as long as the children are in the room, you are on duty, and you can't even do something like exit and head to the lavatory. It's just so intense. So the college level teaching, though, I realized, okay, this is a bit different. If they're making some art, they can kind of, they can be left alone for a little while. Okay. Not gonna, like, if I come back in the room and they're like eating paint, it's something that, something's gone really wrong. And it's not necessarily, my responsibility.
Nope, that's you're grown adults. It's all your fault.
You're grown adults. It'll be okay. I also just really, I wanted to teach college, I think, especially because at the school where I was an undergraduate, the women who worked in the sculpture department were all so inspirational to me. And I remember thinking, that I wanted to emulate these three ladies who ran the sculpture department at Tyler College. And that was an unusual thing at that point, by the way, to have a lot of females teaching sculpture. Really, all three tenured faculty in sculpture were female, which was sort of that was very strange at that time. Typically, if you were in a sculpture department, they might have one female faculty member, so it was really, I remember being very inspired and wanting to, wanting to follow in their footsteps. And I was also, as far as wanting to teach at a college, I was also just so very inspired early on by a teacher that I had at CCBC. Paul Glasgow was my very first sculpture teacher when I began my career here at CCBC as a student, and he taught me in his Sculpture 1 class. And I remembered thinking about how wonderful it was to be in his classroom, because he was such a calm guy, even in the midst of this loud sculpture room, hammers and saws and just so much, chaotic sounds floated through that room. And he was such a calm person in this, in the midst of all of this work. And he really has been this way for so many students, not just me. I think countless people throughout the years. He's been the person that makes this initial point of contact and set somebody on a path to career in the arts. I think he's mentored just, it's got to be at least 100 people in the arts community in this area at this point. At some point in their starting out time, they were in a class with him, or he's mentored them in some way. He's just a natural caregiving person, and he really brought that to his arts classroom. And I remember wanting to, feeling like that would be a wonderful way to spend your life. but it seemed like such fulfilling work. He taught us art. Absolutely. We learned technical skills. We learned about art history in his sculpture class. But I got the sense always from him that he was so fulfilled by the act of teaching, and just watching people learn seemed to be such a satisfying act for him. So I remember thinking, yeah, that's a good way to spend your life. It's a very fulfilling job. He seems to really be happy in this job. And I remember thinking, yeah, I would like to try to also do this. This could be a very fulfilling occupation.
Absolutely. Cool. This is good leading, because knowing what I know about your artwork, the sculpture part is very interesting. But if you had to describe your artwork to someone who's never seen it before and you can't show it to them, how would you describe it?
It's kind of a tough one, because I make a lot of different things through the years, but my most recent work is easy to describe, thankfully. So I don't really focus on sculpture right now. So that's definitely an easier one. And at the moment I am photographing the marks and the smudges or the creases or the fingerprints if somebody's eating something that get left in library books. And I thought about doing this before the pandemic hit, but it became a primary focus once the pandemic started, because I was at the library all the time once they opened up again. And I found such comfort in being able to check out actual books. And I still really love to check out library books. I like to have the paper book in my hand and be able to sort of sit with the paper book and maybe have a cup of coffee. I don't really like to read off of a screen. And I love the fact that the book has this evidence that another human had touched the book. And I found that to be oddly connecting me to some other person out there, when we were all very isolated in the beginning of the pandemic and we couldn't talk to anyone or touch anyone or be close to another person. I found it somehow soothing to know, okay, another person touched this, and I see the spots where they touched the book. It's not a screen, it's not Zoom. I'm holding this thing, and their germs were on it, but I wasn't afraid of their germs because it's just a book. It's not like gonna hurt me. So I've been photographing these little smudges and creases and marks throughout the whole pandemic. And I think I'll probably continue to do it even after restrictions lift. And I've started to like the way that the images have a really odd quality of not being recognizable as a book on their first impression. So like when you look at the photographs, you might not instantly have that recognition of, oh, that's a book, even though I go through a lot of effort to make sure it's exactly the size of the book in the printed photograph. So it is like so, and it's so totally extra clear focus on the book. But it's just not immediately a recognizable thing because they're cropped so heavily to remove certain portions of the text of the book. Sometimes a tiny, tiny little bit of text will show up in the photo, but it doesn't immediately register as, oh, that's a book. For a split second or like less than a second, you might look at it and kind of think it's a landscape or a edge of a stone or a building or something like that.
What a cool series. I'm super excited to see it
I
in front of
hope
you.
so.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. And I I this was delightful. It's been one of my favorite projects so far, is sitting down with the teachers and learning more about them, because I've spent a lot of time with everybody, but we don't always get a chance to just sit down and like discuss beginnings and like structural portions of our lives that have led us to these days. So it's really wonderful to know more things about y'all.
Thanks, Emily.